My inheritance has cost me. The gadgets are nice, and I've almost gotten used to the smell in the cave. It's the criminals. Since my father died, they've focused their attention on me, the people around me. My father's enemies have gotten more twisted with age, more violent and suicidal.
Finishing this thread with no survivors.
Because they know their inevitable end is near. They've seen Batman die.
I can't believe they killed him. Yeah, things are getting rough and dark out here.
They've seen each other die. The Riddler.
Riddle me this.
Dr. Death.
We go way back, Batman.
Two-Face.
I still believe in Harvey Dent.
All gone. Like the life I hoped for beyond this mask. Everything I have, everything I am, is because of him. I'm the Batman's daughter. I'm the Huntress. And tonight, I'm hunting the man who destroyed my life.
Hello and welcome to the Huntress Helena Wayne podcast. This is episode number 24. I'm Ashford, and along with me is Laurel. Hello, Laurel.
Hey, Ashford.
And Diane. How are you, Diane?
I'm doing fantastic, and you?
I'm doing quite fantastic as well because we are going to talk about DC Superstars number 17 featuring Helena Wayne. Diane, what do you think about the cover of this one?
It's definitely very green from what I can tell of the background, but also it's very busy. It's got a lot of text on it. But so that's the only thing about it is that you notice all the text first, but as far as the composition of the cover itself, I absolutely love how the Huntress is right there in the foreground, front and center, focal point. She's definitely posed in a way that's very sexy, but also confident. You know, she definitely has that look on her face that says, "Don't mess with me." You know, she's got a determined look, and she's also holding her profile. So there's a lure of mystery there as well. So she's got a very Batman-themed motif, but she's also wearing a lot of purple. So I'm already intrigued on who DC's newest femme fatale is. I don't know if she's dangerous, but they seem to be implying that. She certainly looks dangerous. And I definitely love the fact that we've got Green Arrow and the Legion of Superheroes in the background, kind of wondering, who's this woman? I mean, I've never seen her before. So they've kind of got that going on in the background, which is fantastic artwork there by Joe Staton. Definitely love how it really grabs your interest right away. It really does pique your interest. It gets you interested in saying, oh, who's this character? I want to know more about her already. So I definitely love it. The composition is very well done here.
Laura, what do you think about the cover?
I agree. Her posture and the way she pops up on the front, it makes her the focal point, which is nice. And she does have a really nice pose because it's alluring, but at the same time, like Diane said, very confident. And I also get the feeling that she could spin and be gone in a real hurry, which is kind of neat, you know, the way her cape's sort of moving. As far as the too much text on the page, there is a lot of text going on. But what I liked was we also have it in sort of layers because like her head is in front of the Secret Origins of Heroes text where Green Arrow and the others are behind it. And then we have some text in front of her. And then in the foreground, we have a file box with what are the Secret Origin files in it. So we at least have some layering of foreground, background, that kind of a thing, which I like that. It sort of helps with the text. It doesn't quite fix it, but, you know, it makes up for it.
Yeah, I'm looking at this right now on my smartphone. This looks pretty cool, and it almost comes off as if the Legion of Superheroes and Green Arrow, they feel as if she must be stopped and she's a villain. And I do like that she has that file in her hands. Maybe she is the detective, and just her legs looks like she can just drop kick someone into next week. And I think that's pretty cool. And the color scheme, as far as on the Huntress, neat stuff. So Diane, can you give us the synopsis for DC Superstars number 17?
Yeah, absolutely. Our story takes place on the parallel world of Earth 2, a world very similar to Earth 1, but subtly different. On Earth 1, the heroes are in their prime, and together they form the Justice League of America. On Earth 2, however, heroes appeared decades earlier, during the late 1930s and 1940s, and fought in the Second World War. Together, these heroes formed the Justice Society of America. In the same way Earth 1 has a Batman and a Catwoman, so does Earth 2, only on this world. They began their careers in 1939 and 1940 respectively. As time progressed on Earth 2 and the heroes aged, Batman and Catwoman reached a point in their lives where they no longer wanted to continue these lifestyles. Catwoman turned herself into the police to redeem for her crimes and emerged as Selina Kyle, having moved on from Catwoman for good. Following the start of Selina Kyle's new life, Bruce Wayne, also known as Batman, decided to pursue a romantic relationship with her, and by 1955, the couple had married. 2 years after that, their daughter Helena was born. Since Helena's birth, Bruce Wayne hanged his cape and cowl for good and committed to a life of philanthropy. Growing up, Helena enjoyed the privileges of a high-standard education, athletic prowess, and training from her parents. It wasn't until Helena turned 19 that her comfortable world would come tumbling down. In the summer of 1976, a former henchman by the name of Silky Cernak from Selina's Catwoman days sought revenge against his former boss, successfully blackmailing her into committing one final crime as Catwoman. Selina agrees to Silky's terms on the condition he not cause harm to her family. On the night of the heist, however, Commissioner Gordon catches wind of the planned robbery and informs her husband, Bruce Wayne, who appears at the scene of the crime as Batman. The altercation that ensues accidentally results in his wife's death. At Selina's funeral, Bruce burns his Batman suit for good and chooses not to avenge his wife's death. His daughter, on the other hand, is not about to give Silky the slip. Deciding to take matters into her own hands, Helena fastens a costume for herself and vows on her mother's grave to bring her killer to justice and carry out her first case as the Huntress. Like her name suggests, the Huntress tracks all of Silky's criminal activities and manages to isolate him at Gotham Harbor, where she puts a stop to his criminal activities for good. Having successfully captured Silky, the Huntress leaves him hanging in a fishnet at police headquarters for Commissioner Gordon to collect. The next day, Bruce comments on whether or not Robin had returned to Gotham temporarily to avenge Selina's death, and Helena conveys, "It may be the work of someone new, someone who is here to stay." And this concludes DC Superstars, number 17. Take it from here.
So this one is, it came out December 1977. We have cover art by Joe Staton, Bob Layton, and Tatiana Wood. We have writer Paul Levitz, also creator. Penciler Joe Staton, as far as also the artwork inside. Inker Bob Layton. Colorist Anthony Tolan. Letterer Ben Oda. And editor Paul Levitz. So Laurel, go for it.
Well, slight peek behind the curtain here. We had a technical difficulty, so this is the second time we're going around recording this. So if I stumble a little bit, that's what's going on. I'm trying to remember what we're doing this time as opposed to what we already recorded. So bear with me. The first thing that struck me about this was there's a lot of Batman in this, that it's almost more Batman than Huntress. In fact, page count wise, it is. But I felt like I would have liked to have seen more of the Huntress origin, her relationship with her mother, maybe getting trained by Batman. I mean, this is supposed to be her origin story. So that I found a bit disappointing, that it was very Batman-centered so much. I don't know, Diane, what did you think?
Truthfully, felt it made more sense to start with Batman and Catwoman first, because in 1977, the DC was a multiverse and not a single shared universe. So there was actually two different versions of these characters, one existing on Earth 1, which was the modern DC universe that started in 1956 with Barry Allen. So this was, the Silver Age universe and also the primary universe. And then we had Earth 2, which contained the world of the Golden Age heroes and all of their stories that start in the 1930s and 1940s. So yeah, if you were a reader back in 1977, it made sense to revisit who these Golden Age versions of Batman and Catwoman are in order to contextualize Helena's narrative, because there's definitely a lot of similarities between the Earth 1 versions of these characters with the Earth 2 counterparts. There's also a lot of differences as well, so you kind of need to contextualize for the reader who these characters are in order to understand what motivates the Huntress to do what she does later on in the story. So for me, it actually made sense to reintroduce who they are talk about, what their lives were like after they married in 1955, which was also the end of the golden age for DC, and what kind of lights they left. We learned that Batman, or Bruce Wayne, stopped being Batman. He's committed to a life of philanthropy instead. Selina Kyle basically became a housewife and a mum to Helena. And then, of course, we see Helena grow up, seemingly not knowing who her parents are at first. She's got a very normal upbringing. She's got a normal childhood, and we see that reflected in some of the flashback sequences. And then, of course, we get to the main event, which is, what led Helena Wayne to become the Huntress. And basically, it boiled down to her mother's life as Catwoman catching up to her. One of her henchmen wanted revenge for being dumped in the slammer. And so all of that ended very terribly and very tragically. And so it basically contextualizes what led Helena to the point of becoming the Huntress. And so we do see, what motivates her. We do see, what her life was like prior to the tragedy, which helps us understand why she chose to do what she did. So, I can understand why, it's disappointing, the fact that it's very Batman and Catwoman centric at first, but at the same time, you have to understand where she comes from, but we have to understand where her parents come from, how they differ from the Earth One versions. And in order to understand, who Helena Wayne is before the tragic event in her life and after the tragic event in her life. So when we meet Helena Wayne in the flashback story prior to the tragedy, she's seems very happy, she's very relaxed, she's very calm, she doesn't seem to have a care in the world. And then we finally get to the event that drove her to become the Huntress. She's very angry, she's very sad, she's in a state of grief, but she's also very determined to seek justice for her mum. You get a sense of passion in pursuit of justice. We see that she's very skilled at what she does, and then we see that at the end of the whole thing, that maybe this is where I belong. Maybe this is what I should be doing moving forward. And so, I think that it makes sense, the chain of events for the Huntress origin. Obviously, I would have preferred seeing all of this from Helena Wayne's point of view, and of course, if this story was told today, we'd probably get it from Helena's point of view, because after all, she is the protagonist of this story. But for 1977, I think it actually works, especially when you've got only 13 pages to work with.
And I think also with with Sherlock Holmes, you have the Watsonian approach, where that's the character inside the book, and then you have the Arthur Conan Doyle approach, where you have the writer writing it. And I think from an editorial capitalist standpoint, Diane, she talked about what's going on inside the book. I think the editors at DC, this is about, okay, we're asking the writers, we want you to buy one more comic book. And this is a whole new, brand new character. And she need cosigns, because you got to remember, you're 15, maybe you're older, and you already have your budget set. And this company, they're asking you to buy one more book. And I think you have to do sometimes that gradual release where you have it okay, so she's the daughter of Batman and Catwoman. That's interesting. And I think also, if you're not astute in the Earth 2, wait a minute, there's another version of these characters. So you got to wrap your head around that if you're not following that. And then I want you to buy another book on this brand new character, because I know it takes a lot for me to add one more thing to my pull list. So I can see from an editorial capitalist, this is a business standpoint of why they did that.
Well, in some ways it was good, because I didn't realize how much of the Huntress outfit, her costume, came from her mother. I've always been not a fan of the deep V-neck with the from her, and she's got an alternating color on the edging of that goes into her cape. But then seeing this, that's what this version of Catwoman is wearing. So it is very true to her mother's look, that she have this V-neck thing, which, like I said, I wasn't a fan of. And I think, Diane, did you say they changed the cape? I can't remember how this version came into being. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Right, so originally when the Huntress was conceived as a character, let's go all the way back and talk about how the Huntress materialized in the first place. Originally, back in 1977, there was only one girl on the Justice Society of America, and that female character happened to be Power Girl. And so they noticed that, okay, so we've got one woman in a team of white men, and she's basically dealing with all the sexism and all the outdated views on women of her older JSA counterparts. And they kind of got together and they said, okay, so we definitely need to have another woman on the team. And Bob Layton in particular, petitioned for an Earth 2 Batgirl. And originally, I think they were going to have Betty Kane, the original Silver Age Batgirl before Barbara Gordon. Originally, I think they wanted to have her be that Earth 2 Batgirl to alleviate Power Girl of the status of being the only woman on the team. But then no one was really into the idea of having Betty Kane or another Batgirl on there, so they just kind of scrapped it. But then the JSA artist at the time, Joe Staton, decided, you know what, we definitely need to add another woman to the team. So they kind of revisited the Earth 2 Batwoman idea, and over the course of discussion, that idea of an Earth 2 Batwoman materialized into the idea of the Huntress, whom they decided should be the daughter of Batman and Catwoman, and that's how Helena Wayne came to be. That's how they got to the origin story of Helena Wayne. So they pitched the idea to the editor, Joe Orlando, at the time, and prior to that, Joe Staton kind of did a sketch of how the character should look, and from that sketch, ironically, is how they came up with the idea that she should be the daughter of Batman and Catwoman. And originally, the cape did not have the bat scallops. It was just a normal regular cape like the one that Helena Bertinelli uses as the Huntress. So originally she was going to have just a regular cape, but then they decided, you know what, we want to convey that this character is the daughter of Batman and Catwoman. So in addition to the purple color scheme for the main suit itself, for the main costume itself, they decided that for the cape it should be blue, just like a dad's, and it should be a bat cape. And so that's literally how the entire look of the Huntress came to be. And of course, you've got the utility belt, which has a H on it, but the H is shaped like a bat symbol to better convey that idea. So it's conveying two things there. It's conveying that this character is a daughter of Batman, but she's also her own person. She's got her own identity that's not necessarily a Batwoman. She is her own person. And that's something that Paul Levitz actually conveys in the letter column that accompanies DC Superstars number 17, when he details how this character actually came to be. And of course, the original sketches are there too. And the crossbow was not originally there either, and it was kind of added later as an artistic choice, the collapsible pistol crossbow. And I guess originally they didn't really intend to have her use it, but then they found a way to get her to use it. And of course, we will get to that point when we get to that, part of the story. But yeah, aesthetically speaking, they definitely wanted a Batwoman. They kind of got the visuals of a Batwoman, but ended up with the Huntress. And then that led to the origin story. And from the origin story, we got a whole new character that quickly became very popular with DC fans in 1977, to the point where she made her first TV appearance in 1979, but we can talk about that another day. But that's literally the story. That's literally the story.
Well, Ashford, I have another one for you. When we talked previously, we were talking about the fact that perhaps in the modern day, we wouldn't have one of the parents get killed. I had argued that I think that was necessary because I liked seeing like the passing of the torch in a very literal sense, because now she's the one at the graveyard making this vow. And that, I don't know how she would have been motivated without this incident. So you were arguing the other side of that. I'm curious if you'd tell us again why you think the modern day they wouldn't have to have her mother get killed.
Yeah, and I do agree with you that is some beautiful storytelling and it's tragic where, how did Batman get started? Seeing the death of his parents, and I'm assuming that's the same thing with Earth 2's Batman. And now, he's dealing with the death of his wife. And now we see where what kickstarted Helena Wayne is the death of her mother. But I think because right now, Diane, she has the Helena Wayne blog. She's out there tweeting. We're about to get this new Birds of Prey books. So Helena, Wayne, Huntress, all that stuff. And there's reprints, facsimiles, all of that now will be in the Zeitgeist. And who knows, someone might pick this up and go like, you know what, there's something here. Like, wait a minute, you mean to tell me there's some character where the parents are Bruce Wayne and Catwoman? Why are we not jumping on this? And I think where they go like, okay, let's do this. I think now they may not be quick to kill those characters off, because now I think it's Brave and some other stuff where they're kind of going against the trope of a hero branching off through the death of a parent. And they're definitely, I think they're trying to hold off on getting rid of the moms. Like they're trying to show stuff like, I know they did this in Supergirl and some other things where we need to start showing like friendships between women. So I know I've seen some people, they compliment the friendship between the two sisters on Supergirl, seeing more relationships with mother-daughters. So I think if they were to do that now, it would be where I think it's interesting if the parents were alive, and then it's like, well, how else are we going to kickstart it? Well, she is the product, the compound of her parents. And, you know, she's an adult now. So once she goes in the world, you know, becomes a lawyer, maybe she might be tired of, I'm seeing people get off who does not need to get off, as far as justice. And there's just people out there suffering. And I was trained by my father, my mother, in different aspects of the game, as far as detective work, intelligence, street smarts, as well as my education. Because, you know, with Helena Bertinelli, it's my parents are the mob. I'm coming from an Italian home. Whereas with the Waynes, chances are they were loyalists during the American Revolution. So we're talking about some white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, some WASPs here. So using all of that, she can go like, you know what? I'm going out and I'm going to go hunt the wrongdoers. I'm tired of this. Now, I'm not saying she's going to pull a Dexter, but it's definitely like I'm keeping tabs on people where I know that they are guilty, and I'm going to find a way for them to see justice, and I don't mean in their lives.
You know, what we do see here of the Huntress, you were talking about the motivations and maybe the training. We do get to see her do her stuff. She makes the vow and then she goes into action. She does the detective work. We see her running around town, stealing into the office to look through files, tracking this gentleman that was supposed to go to a meet with the Silky Sarnak guy. And she takes out the 4 tires of this accomplice's tires so that she can get to the meeting with Silky instead of this man. But she does it using the crossbow, which was really neat. There's a really neat piece of art where we see her using it. And he may or may not even see her, because I was thinking that, you know, this thing is silent and it's dark, and they even make a point of saying he can't see, that, you know, we see her in the reflection on the windshield. And I was thinking, he's not going to know what blew up his tires, because she sort of swoops in and out, and there he is standing there. And to me, that was a very interesting choice of weapon that they did it that way.
Comment on the crossbow. I'll kind of talk about already as far as conceiving the character was, but I actually quite like the use of the crossbow. In that one sequence, you know, specifically I like how Joe Staton depicts how she pulls it out of the holster, and it's collapsed that when it's in the holster, but when she pulls it out, it just opens up into the crossbow and it automatically has a string in the back, you know, whereas normally you would have to pull it yourself, but it just does it automatically, and I thought that's really cool. And I like the fact that, you know, when you see her put the crossbow bolt on there, when you see her in the panel where her reflection is there on the windshield, you know, she's holding that crossbow high, and she looks very determined, she looks very passionate, but she also looks very menacing in that particular page or that particular panel. And then you've got the man looking there. He looks like he's probably noticing a figure there, but he looks confused actually. I'm not sure if he's aware that there's a presence there, but she blows out the man's tires, And then he goes out and he's lamenting the fact his tires are out. But the use of the crossbow there is very brilliantly done. I love that they showcase how the thing actually works, because when we think of crossbows, they don't normally collapse like that. Certainly not pistol crossbows and not real hunting crossbows. So the way that it's designed, it's definitely the kind of crossbow that makes you say, this is the best Wayne money can buy now. Did she buy the crossbow herself, or did her dad always have a crossbow is a good question, but she definitely makes good use of it. And the way that it's designed is very unique and identifiable with the Huntress, so I'm glad that they went with it, to be honest.
I never thought about it, her having that crossbow. I think it's kind of interesting because it's she and Green Arrow, they have like weapons that can pierce. So that's kind of interesting that they would give her that, but that's interesting.
Yeah, but they also went with a pistol crossbow instead of a full hunting crossbow, which covers a wider range and can inflict more serious damage, more serious injury to the point of being fatal, whereas a pistol crossbow, it can still be fatal, but it's more of an incapacitating weapon. It's actually used to hunt smaller animals, but in this case, she's using it, on people, but not in a way that actually hurts them. She just uses it to incapacitate them, which I think is appropriate. So the thing I like about the crossbow here is that, it conveys the fact that she's very much a huntress, quite literally in this case, but it's also a weapon that is not necessarily going to hurt a person if it's used in the right way. And so we see that Helena Wayne is not the killing type. She's the type who will incapacitate. So it does demonstrate, something that's very identifiable with her character, but it's also a choice of weapon that's different from her parents, especially her dad, who used a gun in the Golden Age, admittedly not for very long. But I like the fact that it conveys, that she's a character with her own identity, and it's such an iconic trademark of a character, you really can't picture her without it. So...
definitely. And I like the point about that she's after justice and not bloody vengeance. That what you were saying, she wants justice for her mother, and it's a non-lethal weapon, specifically a non-lethal weapon from the sound of it, which, was a nice thing about her character when she makes this vow. Even the way she looks determined when she's jumping over the fence at the graveyard. And you get the impression, that's what she's after. She's not after killing this guy. And it's interesting when she does finally confront the Silky Sarnak, I think was his name, that he mistakes her for Batman, and the way the art is done, they have her in like this silhouette. So he thinks he's fighting Batman until the very end when she takes him completely out. What did you think of that, Diane? Do you like the way they did that with her?
So the artwork with Joe Staton here is very well done, and of course when we first see the Huntress, and by that I mean when we see Helena Wayne in costume for the first time, we all think that it's Batman right there at the gravestone of Selina Kyle, but all we see is the black bat silhouette. We don't actually see the character until we're up close. Then we see that Helena is in a costume. She's grieving. She's in a state of emotional pain, you can see, and she's also very angry. You can tell he conveys all three of those emotions right there at the cemetery scene. She's sad, she's angry, she's hurt, but then you get to the last panel there, and she's got a very determined look for justice. So going back to what you were actually saying, this woman is out for justice. She's not out for blood, to kind of sort of reference Helena Bertinelli. But she's definitely out to get justice. And so when we see her work as a huntress, we see the passion, we see the determination. If there's one thing that Joe Staton is absolutely great at, is both body language and facial expression. It's very dynamic how he depicts the huntress here. So she's very flexible. She's got very fluid movement to her. She definitely is very flexible. We also see the bat silhouette a few times, not just herself, but also when she's, on the street or when she's standing near a wall, we can see a bat silhouette, which is a nice reference to her dad. So he does this a lot throughout this first story. And then when we get to the docks where she captures Silky Sarnak, she's there entirely in a bat silhouette, and it's even colored as such to help convey that idea. And then when we see her, walking towards Silky, she's got a very menacing presence in that one panel. She looks very demonic, I would say, in that panel where she looks like a giant bat, literally. And so when she captures Cernak, you find yourself wondering, okay, so how did he mistake, a woman's voice for a man's voice? I guess she disguised her voice. I'm not sure. But the way that Joe Staton really lays out the comic here, it's very easy to follow. And of course, he's got a very good sense of panel layout as well. He guides through the artwork the reader's eye through every step of the way, and he never uses arrows to help, the reader along like they did in the Silver Age and Golden Age. No, he's a very good visual storyteller. He really guides the reader. He really gets you engaged with this character. So everything about it is very well done. We see the Huntress in costume, but we also see her as a bat silhouette, which really does convey, Dark Knight daughter. It's really very brilliantly done.
Ashford, what'd you think of this when she finally comes into her own here?
Well, for a first appearance, I believe that it was smooth and had a lot of style to it, where, she's the daughter of Catwoman and Batman, but she's also emerging with her own identity. And we're being introduced and especially with Earth 2, because, when you say Earth 2, I immediately think the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. And this is showing us that, we're going to kind of move a little bit more into the modern age, the 80s. So, I think it worked here in the action scenes. And she looks believable, like she can kick butt. I mean, that's what I like most about it. And especially the way they would draw back then. I like the fact that she looks like a full-grown woman.
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't look like a teenager. She looks like a woman.
Not some waif.
Aye. Yeah. Yeah.
Not that people that are waifs can go fight. I don't want to make it sound that way. But it seems like every single young female character has that body type. And it's nice to see somebody, like you said, look full-grown.
And the thing is, if you just look at pictures of history, people just look younger now. So when they draw comic book characters now and they're young people, like if they draw Batgirl, they said she was 17, I would believe. If they said she was 24, I believe it. So I think that's just realistic. Like if you look at 24-year-old in 1966, they just look older. You look at a high school student from 1934, they look like they've been through the mill a little bit. Like they look like adults. Mm-hmm. And if you look at like a 26-year-old now, a lot of them, and it's not just because now I'm in my 40s. You put a 26-year-old actress now and you put a 26-year-old actress from 1976, it will look dramatically different to you. So I do get that, but that's one of the reasons why I like reading this character, because she just looks like I'm a woman about town.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Well, and, we were talking about her confidence. I like that in the last panel, how she's got a little bit of slyness here that, maybe somebody knew it's not Robin, because her father thinks maybe Robin had captured him. And she's got this little subtlety to her that, maybe it's a new person and they're here to stay. And that she enjoyed doing this, that she wanted to go back and do more as the Huntress. I really got a kick out of that. Diane, I know she's your favorite character. So what about her here makes her that for you?
Well, obviously the first thing that appealed to me about the Huntress, or Helena Wayne as the Huntress to be more specific, is that she's a daughter of Batman and Catwoman. So there was that obvious curiosity of, okay, so how would a daughter of Batman and Catwoman actually be? Would she be more like a dad? Would she be more like a mum? She surprisingly brings the best of both traits of her parents, but she's also got her own personality. She's got her own method of doing things that's profoundly different from her dad's, whereas her dad is fond of using batarangs and gas pills and all kinds of gadgets, including specialized vehicles like a bat plane, a bat copter, a bat gyro. That was actually a thing. A Batmobile, that was her dad's thing. The Huntress doesn't use any of that. She's got daggers instead. We don't see the daggers in this particular story, but we will see them later on. She's got a crossbow that's very identifiable with her character. I like the fact that she's got her own identity. So I would say I would say who she is as a character really stands out more than the fact that she's just the daughter of Batman and Catwoman. She's definitely a fully developed character. She's got her own personality, own character motivation, her own methods of crime fighting. She's got her own costume. She's got her own gadgets and weapons. You know, everything about this character is distinct, and it's that distinctness that really gets me invested in her character, and it gets me to say, yes, I absolutely want to know more about who Helena Wayne is. I definitely want to get to know her Huntress more. And of course, this was before I even knew who Helena Bertinelli was, ironically enough. You know, I know it sounds kind of weird that, you know, at the time that I found out about Helena Wayne, I was about 20 or so. And of course, most people my age, you know, they're like, when I think of the Huntress, they think of Bertinelli, but I have never heard of the Huntress prior to Helena Wayne. My first exposure to her was the Ashley Scott Huntress from the Birds of Prey show, but I did not become invested in the character until I read her in the JSA annual that tied into the Thy Kingdom Come story arc of JSA, and I said, you know what, I got to know more about this character. And so I read the origin story that we just covered here, and I'm like, I love this character. I want to know more about him. So I kind of just read every story that I could find with the character. This story is obviously collected in the Huntress Origins book that came out literally last week and the week before that at comic shops. But before that, you know, it was originally printed in the Dark Knight Daughter trade, which came out in 2006, around the time that I became aware of the character. But I didn't buy the book until 2011 because through dumb luck, I found the book in a comic shop and I got it then. But yeah, I just love the character, so I read every single story that I could with the character. And of course, when we got to the Crisis on Infinite Earths reboot, that's when I actually found out about the Helena Bertinelli Huntress, you know, because I had never heard of the character before then either. So it's kind of weird how this journey with the Huntress even started. It's just, I guess it happened purely by accident and through dumb luck, I guess. So yeah, I just love the character. She's great. I wish that DC would actually do more with her, and not just, I would like for them to not write the character as an extension of her parents, but definitely bring back the original character, or at least for the Earth 5G reboot that we're going into right now in 2020. If they bring in a version of Helena Wayne, I would like for her to be more like the character that we got pre-Crisis, because this character is fully developed. She's perfect as she is. I wouldn't change a thing about her, to be honest.
Well, on that note, I'm about ready to wrap this up. I think it was good to read this because I didn't have the background, because to me, this is all new. I've not read this Helena Wayne character much at all. So it was a good introduction to me. I know that you guys covered, what did you just cover?
All-Star Comics.
Thank you. Yes, I know I think that's technically where she first appeared. Do I have that right?
Well, it's kind of, yes, sort of. You know, DC treats All-Star Comics number 69 as the first appearance of the Huntress ever. But I guess you can also count DC Superstars, because this story came out at the same time as All-Star Comics 69. So they were both released on the same day, so whichever one you picked up first was your first introduction to the Huntress. But I would say both introduced her, but DC treats All-Star as her first actual appearance in a story.
Yeah, well, I can see why, because they do actually have her out here in costume and everything, where I think the other one, she just has like a silhouette appearance or something like that. I'm sorry, it's been a while since I read it. But at any rate, I'm glad you had us read this. I'm glad we're visiting the Helena Wayne character, because I just don't have a lot of experience with her. And it is really interesting to see where she came from.
Yeah, and you also start to see some of the roots of the Bertinelli Huntress as well, because, you know, the one thing that Helena Bertinelli does have in common with Helena Wayne is that it took the tragic death of her parents to catapult her into that lifestyle. But at the same time, the different backgrounds, you know, profoundly takes these characters in different directions. You know, with Helena Wayne, I would say that the death of her parents was not really necessary, because, you know, as she's a daughter of Batman and Catwoman, that alone would have, you know, inspired the character to become the Huntress all on her own, without, you know, needing to kill off one or both of her parents for it to happen. And this is something that gets touched upon much later on, most notably in her first solo story. You know, but in the case of Helena Wayne, they gave her a tragic origin story to parallel her father's origin story, but it was really not necessary for her character. I argue that it's not necessary for her even now. But for Helena Bertinelli, it's definitely necessary for her character because without, that brutal murder of her parents right in front of her, she doesn't have she doesn't have anything to go off of for becoming the Huntress. Who would Helena Bertinelli be if her parents stayed alive and she grew up, with her parents and brother and everyone else, still in her life, I would argue that her life would have gone in a completely different direction. This is not necessarily the case with Helena Wayne. I think that she would have chosen this regardless and she would still be the same person with or without the tragedy. Whereas with Helena Bertinelli, she definitely needs that backdrop. It's definitely needed for her character to diverge from a path that she otherwise would have taken. So it's interesting seeing where the seeds of the Bertinelli Huntress came from with Helena Wayne's Huntress, but then you also see where their stories diverge. So it's very interesting to make that observation as well.
Ashford, do you have anything else you want to add? Yeah.
No, I think we can wrap it up here. Now, the only thing I have to add is I'm looking forward to reading more about this character and seeing her interact with those characters of Earth 2, such as the JSA. Now, what do you guys think about Helena Wayne? How would you like to see her come back as far as in all the different media out there, from comic books to video games, cartoons, movies, television, you name it? Where would you like to see her come back? How would you like to see her introduced? What ancillary characters would you like to see her interact with? And how would you like to see Helena Wayne portrayed? What's the best version of her as far as being reintroduced to this now a new 2020 and beyond audience? You can write to us at thehuntress.podcast.com and leave us a message. You can also write to us on Twitter at Huntress Podcast. Follow us on Apple Podcasts. We are on Spotify. You have to type in the Batgirl /Huntress Podcast, and you can find us on Spotify here. That's all the rage in Trenton, New Jersey. This is cool stuff. We would like to hear from you because now it is on. We know you are out there, you Huntress lovers of Helena Wayne and Helena Bertinelli. We want you to jump in on this and let's be a community. So write to us, leave us a message on the website, thehuntress.podcast.com. If you want to email us, you can do that at feathersandfoes@gmail.com. And if you want to support the show, please give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. That way it can mess with the algorithms and people can find us. You can also support us by being a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/Right On Network. And that is WRIGHT on Network. So until next time, bye-bye.